Kali Dasgupta, who will talk about art and culture during the Golden Period. Dr. Dasgupta is a postdoctoral associate in genetics and developmental biology at New York University, trained in Manipuri, Kathakali, and Bharatanatyam dance styles. She has performed around the world through the group Mitralaya of Kolkata, India. She's interested in languages, oration, photography, and art.
So I've been given the responsibility to look at the art and culture during the period, what we call the Golden Period, from 200 BC to 500 AD. And there is so much amount of art and artistic material available from this time. It is really difficult to pick and choose what to show and what not to show. But I'll show those ones from which I can understand the culture of the time. And from that study, I'll try to push forward that there is a push towards urbanization during this period. There is an effort towards sophistication, and somehow a very deep effort towards codification. And we'll talk about what kind of codification we are talking about. So geographically, there are two kinds of influence we see on the art during this time. One is what I call top-down, that is a political influence, and that comes in two flavors. One is the indigenous kings that who came, this is after Maurya, so whoever ruled after Maurya, they have left their influence. And maybe it was the Sunga Empire who came from 200 to 80 BC, and the Satavahanas, very powerful kingdom from the south. But during this period, actually, this marks this period of invasion of several Greco-Bactrian kingdoms, Parthians, and especially the Kushanas, who came from the west, and they brought their Western, Central Asian, and Greek influence into Indian art to a great extent. And after that, eventually the Guptas arose and took over all of North India, and the Vakatakas were at that point in the south. So we'll see the influence of these indigenous kingdoms and the Western kingdoms on the art of them. So the other effect that I see is actually a bottoms-up approach, where the people themselves, irrespective of whoever is the king, is giving an effect to the art and culture. And one of the aspects you see is a deep sense of or feel for urbanization. And what am I talking about? So during this period, actually, there are hundreds of excavation sites in India, throughout from the northwest corner to the central and south. And here you see one example of Pushkalavati, which is on the far left-hand Gandhara area. And these mounds here, you can see are marked by urban prosperity, because you see cities with regular plans, you have parallel streets, you have houses, large circular structures which were thought to be stupas, and also actually single standing stupas sometimes are found, like the one in the Swat Valley. It still stands. There are complex houses, there are temples, elaborate brick tanks, etc., etc. And when you go inside these houses, actually, you find very fine pottery, both redware and greyware, as well as the black slitware, which came from the Gandhara side. And also household items, like a large amount of it was made from terracotta. There were glass beads, bone hairpins, and precious jewelry. This is a hair pin or comb. This is a gold jewelry worn in the turban. And this is, of course, other gold jewelry. So if you look at the pottery, as well as the jewelry, there is deep sophistication in the material being produced and an effort towards strong craftsmanship. And that is being brought about by guilds of merchants actually who were living during this period. So the guilds were very strong during this period. Guilds are actually an association of merchants and craftsmen. And they elected their own heads and framed their own rules also. They controlled the basic price and quality, and they also served as bankers. So, due to the presence of these guilds, actually, we see this effort towards sophistication in architecture, sculpture, and painting. And I'll talk about a few of them, how we see that. So, the oldest standing structures from that time is actually the Sanchi Stupa. During this period, Bharut Stupa was built, which actually only parts of it have been found in the museum in Kolkata. You have the rock-cut caves, which were called chaityas. We'll talk about it later. In Bhajar, and in this complex you also find smaller stupas also, and also the Udaygiri and Khandagiri caves, which are actually Jain resting places. So what happened to Sanchi during this period is a reflection of what is going to happen with every form of art. So, originally only the stupa existed. When the Sungas came, they were Brahminical, but they were supporters of Buddhism. So they enlarged the perimeter, they put a stone casing on it, they put the umbrella and the balcony on top, they put stone railings. And then the Satavahanas came and made the 4 Toranas of the gates. So they are not actually architecturally adding anything to it, they are adding lots and lots of decorations. And not only are it's like architectural decorations, each of these pieces are actually decorated heavily with yakshas and yakshis, like fertility spirits and the Jataka tales you see, and there are Buddhist motifs also. So, if you look at the Chaitya caves, this is one of the oldest caves at Khada in Lonavala, close to Bombay. And Kardi is also close to Maharashtra, so somehow the rock cut caves are all located around Maharashtra in the west-south. And what you see is they are actually prayer halls with columns, and you have the pillared arches. Originally, they were not very decorated. From the time that you go from the oldest to the latest ones, which is Ajanta, they've developed during Gupta age, you can see this massive increase in the detail. A second, a more closer look at the Ajanta, because we are talking so much about it, it's such an important part of this time. So it is those 20 to 29 caves around the bend of the Boda River, and they're all cut out of granite. And we actually know that the excavation or making of the caves happened in 2 phases, and we are talking about the earlier phase here. And also, these were largely supported by the guilds, which is very interesting. The last type of architecture that appeared later were the Guptas, who came up with the first concept of the standing Indian temples that we see all the time today. So originally, they first came up with this concept of the square sanctum, where you place the deity. And you have the pillared porch, where the audience will come to meet the deity, because that's what we do in the temple. And later, they came up with the processional path of circumambulation, or the Dakshinapatha, especially because the Gupta architecture was, in them, the square was considered to be the most perfect form, and temples were designed to be appreciated from all sides. You also see that the original first temples had monolithic flat slab roofs, but with time, when they had more bricks and stones available, these beautiful adorning towers, or the shikharas, which are very famous for Indian temples, the Guptas started this idea. And not only did they make the arches, they put humongous amount of decorations in these arches that we will see later. So when we look closer, the next step we need to look is at the sculpture and the iconography, because there is a phase of transition from very early to what it transitions into and will move into a modern style. So to look at the earliest versions of iconography, we'll go back to Bharat. So Bharat, whatever has been recaptured and sent to the museums actually, we find they are heavily decorated with Buddhist reliefs, and also not only Buddhist reliefs. But this is a period where it is un-iconic. So you don't see Buddha, you see like the Dharma Chakra, you see the Bodhi tree, and you also see Maya Devi dreaming of the elephant. But other than that, the Bharat is famous for its yakshas and yakshinis. So this is very old Indian iconic structures, characters, who are actually fertility spirits embodying the nature, and they're protectors of life and wealth. They're also thought to be pictures of the donors actually. And you also see seals of the actual donors. There's one more thing, you see them standing on animals, which could be the first concept of the Vahanas that we have later. And we see this Yavana Dwarpal, who's a Greek doorman. So not only are they putting pictures of human characters who are supporting the guilds, they're also putting other people or foreigners visible in and around the city as part of the sculpture or the temple itself, actually. The second side we need to go and look at is a place called Chandragirga, which was in East India. The location is not very well preserved, but there are hundreds of pottery, saved from this area, which belongs to the Sunga period. What I want you to see is there are several terracotta plaques, very small dolls of yakshas, but there are several terracotta plaques showing some pre-time gods and goddesses. So this one is considered to be a predecessor of Lakshmi, as we know. This is a sun god, we don't see him anymore. There is a lot, very, very fine, elegant, refined pottery, heavily designed. But one of the most iconic characters is here. She is Panchachura, or she is a fertility goddess, who is marked by her very heavy jewelry from the head and the 5 or 10 auspicious weapons as hairpins in her hair. So this civilization is lost, this iconography is lost, but today the goddess is celebrated in the same area. You can still see the design of the jewelry is very similar, and the weaponry has now become 10 hands of the goddess as she holds them. The last thing we want to see from here is actually from all the terracotta shrines that we find. If you look at the different kinds of beads, here is one Panchachura, there is a second one, then this is an apsara or a dancer, this is a second apsara with wings, and this is a normal lady with a child or a couple. What you can notice is the very diaphanous clothing, but very heavy jewelry at the pulse points, especially the bangles, you have the anklets, and the very heavy girdle, which was called the mekhla. And of course, the coiffures. Everybody, all the girls have very heavy coiffures. So these belts and jewelry is also seen in Ajanta paintings, but in Ajanta it also develops into a different kind of clothing that you will see later. So this period actually started the cult of building standalone murtis or idols, and they were started by two schools. One was the Gandhara school, and the second one was the Mathura school. So this, I'm showing a picture of one of the beautiful ladies from the Mathura school, which is the indigenous school. And the artisans from the Mathura actually were very experts in carving yakshas, trees, human bodies, especially female figures. But remarkably, they are the first people who came up with the human image of the Jinnah or Buddha's image, and they are considered to be the formative for the other sets of arts. So here, you see some of the pictures, very famous sculptures from the Mathura school, and it shows you that there is an assimilation of all religions. They carved Vishnu, they have carved Jayasagadabhadra, and they have also carved their king Kanishka. So they don't have a specification or choice of any religion that they want to go for. But it's interesting to see how they carved Vishnu, Buddha first, and what he transcended into. Originally, they were based on the yakshas, and they were fleshy, bold, smiling figures, and they were not really anatomically correct. But with time, actually, the Buddha becomes thinner, and then the detailing on the surface of his clothing is marked, and there's a very decorated halo. The other school that came during this period is actually the Gandhara school, and this is due to the Greco-Bactrian kingdoms, the Kushanas and the Shakas who came in. They brought in their sense of art and artistry, which was definitely Hellenistic in influence. And so they modeled the Bodhisattva or the standing Buddha or all the Buddhas on the Greek god Apollo. And they placed great importance on anatomical correctness, facial depthing, and specifically it is stressed on the bodily features and the external beauty of the faces. There is no decoration on the halo, if you can see, but the faces are deeply expressive. And they are very famous for the starry Buddha, to see how very anatomically correct they can be. So the last set of iconography that comes up is when the Guptas came back and they brought back all the Hindu iconography. So you can see from the Dashavatara temple, you can already see the cosmic line Vishnu or Anantashayan Vishnu. And this is a very famous panel from Udayagiri caves in Vidisha, Madhya Pradesh, which is called the Varaha panel. So you have Varaha or Narayan in the boar form, and he's saving Bhudevi or goddess from the water. And if you look closely, there are several other iconographic figures. For example, there is Sagar. We don't have ocean anymore, but originally we used to venerate ocean a lot. And the later gods and goddesses, like for example, you have the first Shiva Linga, you have Skanda Kartikeya, you have Shakti or Mahishasura-Mardini, and you have the first Ganesha relief, all in the Udayagiri caves. So the Guptas have already started making these ideas. So the last portion of talk from the Guptas that we have to talk about, of course, is the Ajanta paintings. So I'm very thankful that Ajanta was brought up earlier, and we already know so much about Ajanta. So we'll talk about some specific ideas that is special for the Gupta period. And as you can see that actually the whole interior, the exterior, and the wall and the ceilings, everything is covered with painting. So the idea was not only to have a silent monastery, but with the painting also, they were trying to bring out the spirituality of the situation. So the paintings have a spiritual quality to it. There are other caves also which have paintings which come in the later period, but we'll focus on Ajanta. So this is a panel showing, as we said, that they are mostly stories from the Jataka tales, and here is a king and a queen sitting in the center. So mostly the pictures are from Jataka tales and there are scenes and they are painted, as already said, there is one central character and the pictures emanate in all directions and you have to see and look at them as a whole, not as one picture as itself. They are dry frescoes and they have the main colors, of course, are red, yellow, brown. I think it was already discussed before. But what I want you to focus on is, here you have the scene, the same king and queen previously. So you have the king and queen sitting and you have all their attendants around them and then there are dancers dancing and there are other people doing other things over there. But even though this is a composite scene, there is exquisite detail in every single character. So to make them stand out actually, the characters were bright and multicolored but they were never repeated, which is a fundamental concept of Indian art. Even the standalone figures who are like Avalokiteshwar, so they are the heroes, but as a general female is painted with as much effort as the god is painted. So, yeah, so to remember that actually there's a very fundamentally realistic and humanistic portrait of a scene, not a god placed in the center, as it said. So continuing with the realistic portrayal, if you look even more closely, you see how clearly every character, this is an Apsara, this is an imaginary character. You have a queen and a princess, they are also semi-imaginary characters. They have been dressed and designed with so much detailing along with real people. So this is a king with his regime. And here you can see they are actually real people who are following him and their faces reflect their emotion. As well as you see foreigners, it's very clear they are foreigners from their clothing. They are all standing in the crowd and watching the king. So every character that is available to the artist to see, he is captured in the paintings. Even more detail, he has captured the clothing of the period from the king to the guardsman, from the princess or the queen to the dancing girl. In complete detail to show what kind of clothing is being worn by whom. And if you can see now, the diaphanous clothing is gone, they are wearing the skirts. They are beginning to wear the skirts now. And the detailing goes into even the type of cloth, where you can identify the ikat print, which is still continuing today. And actually the ikat print is available, visible even in the stone carvings in that time. Even to the point of the embroidery. There are very famous mentions of geese flying embroidery, and that is also captured by the artist. So what I see is the artists during that time are making a very conscious effort to record culture and society as a whole, not as an understanding codification, but right as he sees it, as life is. And one of the known or written codifications of that, of course, is Natyashastra. I'll talk about why I think that's a codification of life. But it's very nice to have had a very beautiful presentation of Natyashastra. You know a lot about it already. But one of the concepts that he also mentioned is that this is now the period where drama is starting. So about first millennium BC, 1,000 years before this, Panini has already said that there are existence of troops of dancers who perform dramas on stage. So acting and drama and entertainment has been going on for 1,000 years now. It's just a codification. So one of the things that Natyashastra mentions is actually that the purpose of the plays, as we were discussing for so long, is the transference of rasa. And what is rasa? According to them, it's the human life or emotion, and it has to be transferred from the author through the actor to the audience. So what are they using for doing this plays, doing the Natyashastra presentation? They use the Kavya plays that were written during this period, which were Sanskrit plays. And Natyashastra also mentions specifically that there are two ways of presenting any play. You can play it in a Lokadharmic setting, where it has to be only dialogue based and the people wear normal clothing. I like these two pictures because they are both children doing the plays. And the second style is the Natyadharmi, or the very stylized musical form. So one you can do as the street plays, one you can do as the stage plays. You can do the same play in both forms. The point is to get the essence of the story across to the layman, to the king. Very interesting part is the Sanskrit plays during this period. I won't go into depth, but some of the examples is like Kalidas's Abhigyana Sakuntala. You have Shudraka's Mrichakatika, the little clay card. You also have, this is actually from Silapadikara. The point I'm trying to make is all of these plays, they are not didactic or religious in nature at all. They have plethora of very realistic characters. You have the heroine, her friends, the hero. You have the wife and the son. and you have the courtesan. So, and they're filled with court intrigues, political drama, comedy, romantic interlopes, and lot of song and entertainment, and fight sequences as well. So what are they putting up on the play for the stage? It's not a didactic story of God actually, they're putting up the stories of life again. So, we have been talking about Natya Shastra, which talks about dance and music in so much detail. And of course we see the dancers and the musicians on the Ajanta paintings, as well as on the sculptured group of the temples. But it goes way much deeper, as I see it. For example, if you look at this character, there are 3 characters standing next to each other. This is a piece from the Ajanta painting. And they are actually standing in the 3 mentioned dance poses. You have the Sthanaka 2 separated foot, the foot in the front and the foot at the back. So it's not just by accident that they're standing like that. The artist knows Natya Shastra, he knows the postures, and he's putting them up like that. So he's asking you to take a larger look at the picture, as well as a very detailed look at the picture. You can have more iconography. You have symbolism. For example, Natya Shastra talks about how you can use your hands and mudras to express ideas, but it goes deeper. For example, a poet from that time can describe the hero like saying his hands are supple like flower bud. The artist will take this idea and actually draw it that way. So there are several layers of giving aesthetics back to you. The last one, this is my favorite. So we already talked about the Navarasas, or the 9 kind of expressions that the Natya Shastra talks about. So with these 9 expressions, you are supposed to be able to enact any scene, a happy scene, a sad scene, or of wonder, or whatever. So, but it's not one facial expression that can bring out a scene. For example, if a king is coming, there has to be happiness, there has to be love, there has to be wonder also. So any scene is brought about by a composition of several of these expressions. And if you look at this one scene where the king is actually telling his queen that I'm going to leave the kingdom and become an ascetic, you have the specific facial expressions of the females around him, around her actually, followed by Natya Shastra principles, giving you the scene that one is sad, one is curious, and one is seriously angry. So, what you see from all the artistic material available from this time is that Natya Shastra is influencing all the artistic material available. Whether you have the Sanchi Stup, which gives you the gorgeousness of a city actually, or you have the simplicity of life of a mendicant, or you have the little clay card play where it shows the frolic of love. You have the Dhutam showing him the sadness of separation, and you also have the Ajanta painting where the prince is telling the princess, I have to leave you, and the princess is very sad. So generally, all the aspects of rasa and beauty and aesthetics is encoded in every form of art that we find from this period. And that is what I mean by the transposition of Natya Shastra. The people of this time, they believe that drama and aesthetics is not restricted to stage. As has been already said, that life is a play, it's a performance or a story, and it has to be encoded and retold over generations. And it can be told live, where you see Teacher White saying Pandavani or the Mahabharata story over 5 days as a single singer, or it can be written in all other forms. And this idea of the cosmic dancer lying at the center of the creation, holding the yin and yang, you can have that encoded, you can have that dynamism encoded and in a piece of rock, which is one of the oldest pictures of the Nataraja. So I'll just leave you with this last slide, which is a reenactment of Shakuntala, Abhigyan Shakuntala, in the Manipuri style. The point is, Manipur is in far east corner of India. They had not heard of Natya Shastra till about 200 years ago. They had their own dance and stories. But just listening to Natya Shastra and reading the plays of Shakuntala, they are able to create this exact picture that the authors were trying to tell of that time. You have the king and the queen, you have the real characters of the Sakhis or the Dwarpals or the gatemans, you have children frolicking about, and you have imaginary characters, actually, Apsaras who are very happy. So to recreate this whole picture that the Kavi was seeing at that point of time is what I see as being encoded in the art and sculpture throughout the period. Thank you.
Thank you, Krishna. Are there any questions for Krishna?
Were there any, are there any like period or time or evidence of Ramayana or Mahabharata, as a play or?
As a play, of course. So the what you missed out was the time right before this was the epic era. So the Ramayana and the Mahabharata has been written right before this. So Shakuntala is a scene from Mahabharata. So either you're doing pieces of it, or of course, yes, as I was showing the other lady, she's singing the whole Mahabharata here. So yes, Ramayana and Mahabharata is the staple story, but there are other stories taken from other places also.
Any other questions?
Yes.
This was more related to the influence of the Greek that you mentioned. One thing I heard in some podcast was that maybe your expert opinion might help me understand that in Greek,
Yes.
they don't show the face looking straight.
Absolutely.
They only show the profile.
Yes, I missed that point because of lack of time.
But in India, most of the faces are looking front, right?
No, so there are both things. If you look at these Mathura faces for Indians, these faces actually look straight.
Yeah.
These faces don't look straight. The eyes look down at least. It's not as straight as the Indian style is. The Greek style is slightly looking away.
Is there any significance to that?
I am not sure.
I think Gandhara's eyes straight and Madura's go down. Is that true? Because they see the Greeks, the cultural influences look outwards, but for the Hinduism and Buddhism, they kind of inner thinking, so they kind of the eyes go down. So that's what I think.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so my topic is science. Now, what you just heard and have been observing is the analytic mind of these people. The analysis, what universe is, what universe does, who are we, why we speak, why we think, what we think, what makes us think, how we relate. So there have been huge amount of work on this, and what we know or what we heard here today is an extremely small segment of this large piece of literature. What I'll go to present to you is my understanding of how this might have developed and what we think the salient points are. So first I'll start up with the things that I will touch on. I'll touch on number theory, cognition, speech, prosody, musicology, dramatics, mind, yoga, medical, astronomy, and metallurgy. Now, the point is, by this time, as you can imagine, the Greeks have already prospered. Greeks had a huge literature by this time, creative literature. But the Indian science is different than the Greek science. It's not individual science. It is kind of more fundamental science. It's not geometry or mathematics or something. It is like what a number is. So I'll kind of gradually guide you through this process. And there's the books and so on, you don't bother, but there's a large amount of them. And the reason I discovered Charlie is because I tried to learn some Sanskrit, and then I tried to find out who Sanskrit scholars are. So that's how Charlie came in my life. So the point is, whatever you will read as translations in the world by whosoever is wrong. The original doesn't state it. The original has no translation. Any knowledge has to be understood, reflected, contemplated. Has to be digested, not to be read. Knowledge is realized. Knowledge is not instilled. Skills are instilled, but knowledge comes. Either you know or you don't know. So it's very difficult. So what we'll go through in this process to see how the knowledge developed, what we call knowledge. The first part of it, which in this thing, number theory. We talk about big numbers. Indians knew about big numbers and so on. And there have been talks about zero infinity. There have been talks about large countings and so on. I had never seen literature before saying how those numbers came to be. Only last month I discovered that there is this Jain philosopher called Mahavir, which is working here. Mahavir. So he kind of said, I don't know how he said, we have not have any accounting of it, but he kind of propounded that the universe that we see may not be infinite. There is a finite boundary to the universe, measurable. So what happens is, how do you measure? Then no foot and scale, no kind of a yards or this thing. So is your the width of the finger. So that's the natural width we have as a unit of measurement. Then you have, how do you measure time? Is the wink of an eye. So with these two things, you can imagine how large the universe may be. So then you say, okay, all right, I go on measuring. So when you measure, so the question is that boundedness. So this is a mathematical term. That in the sense you finally end with a wall. You finally end with a finite boundary. And up to that you measure. Now in the boundary, people who know mathematics, in the boundary what happens is you can extend the boundary as far as you want. So what that basically means is you can really extend your numbers as far as you want. But it is not infinite. Infinite, as we say very casually, infinite. So this person realized that infinite is something that you can't really comprehend, is beyond you. What you can say is, you can say is innumerable. That is so large. So they then term that the what you can really comprehend, you use a word called lokakasha. This loka is a very old word of India that means, which also comes in your English word look. That you can see, that you can visualize. So that is different than a lokakasha. So what happens is you have a boundary, and that boundary you measure, and beyond that boundary, you don't know what happens. When you don't know that happens, that becomes infinite. So when we say God is infinite, we think that something called God exists. But infinite something we can't comprehend. So this is the Indians eventually use the word called ananta. Ananta as in no end. So this is a very peculiar mathematical concept that is no end. Universe has an end, but aloka, incomprehensible universe, has no end, which is kind of measured by the astronomy these days. So cognition, to watch my own time. Jaina discovered that the senses are limited information and that information gathering ability and our views of impression could be less than optimum. This is an extremely important observation if we say that it's happening in 600 BC. I see, but I may not see everything. My eyes may not be as acute as the other person's eye. That's number one. Number two is, even if it is very accurate, it is limited. So that they kind of have so that becomes the discovery of mind, that I have something else in me which I can apply to my senses, and then probably I can see a little better, stronger, sharper, more. So and then the question is, so this is discovery of mind, but through that process, they develop this cognition, a beautiful theory, that is the same object might be seen 1,000 ways by different people, depending upon their eyesight, depending upon the understanding, depending on the relationship, depending on the perspective, and all of them have to be right. That's because somebody saw it. So this acceptance that a view is not wrong, that became the basis in my thinking of the Indian civilization, that everybody has a chance to exist. So that is where when I imagine the St. Thomas comes and he preaches something, and people did not say, go away. He says, okay, you have another view. What he's preaching? The God was born as a son somewhere, this thing. Yeah, okay, all right, come and down, take a food. You see what I'm saying? So this anekanta, so think about it, it's not very easy, I can't really say in my own few minutes and so on, the depth of this word. So then what happens is, then other people, once they have a perspective, they went on to kind of discovering that, okay, if the views are multiple and perceptions are multilateral, is there any truth? Is there any reality? Or it is all kind of perceptions. So that kind of went on, which you kind of saw to the philosophy, but that led to the science of yoga. In the sense, yes. Why I call it science of yoga? Because he developed a technique. What is the technique? Technique is, if you never tell a lie, if you never injure anyone, if you never steal anything, if you really contain yourself what you got, and if you don't really feel bad to anyone else, no lust, then if you practice that from the beginning, then the object will show up to you as it is. Your view and the object view is the same. That's yoga. Yoga is not something you do through exercise somewhere. Yoga is that I see you, I understand all of you, not my perception of you. You see me not as a brown-skinned man here talking about science. You see me as a man or inner part of my man. Yoga. So this process led to, or did not lead to, so the science of speech has happened much earlier. This is from the Vedic times. Because people thought the universe had a sound. God speaks. So Moses did not hear God, Vedas people heard God. So the God is kind of talking to them. Do this, do this, do this. Then the question is, how they do that? It's not a physical sound, but they say that you can really get the feeling through your voice, through your speech. So that transition, that the universe can be manifested in human speech. And then I have the ability to really narrate, express everything that is my mind in my words, became the science of speech. So they developed a word called Varna, which Prem talked about. Varna becomes a symbol where that I have my articulating units. I'm not as large as the universe, but I have my ability to speak through my lungs, through my throat, through my mouth, through my tongue. So I can really make operate configurations on them where I can really connect to the universe. So that hypothesis, so they call it Varna. Varna means a unit of description, unit of speaking, unit of narration. So there's cosmic in origin, but this is philosophical. We don't know where it comes from. It is not an exact definition, but the whole point I'm trying to make is that from the universe, which is large and expansive and extremely powerful, that kind of expressed by the limited capacity of my muscles, my lungs, and that becomes the burden. And they kind of thought that burdens are 64 in number and so on. And burdens are grouped into two different groups called Shura and Vyanjana. And so that is kind of more technical, which the Panini goes into more detail about. Vyanjana divided 8 groups, and sound was, this is important. sound was considered a trace of the evolution. Why? Why? Because somehow they knew the space has to be created. There's no space, no universe. So hence there is no light. So you have to create space. And space needs sound. And that space will create light. Because light is contained in a space. I have not seen the literature on that analysis, but that kind of is missed by Aristotle. That is, the space is the fundamental unit that you have to create. And they go up the sound and so on. The science of prosody. So this is another particular thing again. So the people thought that the universe is kind of a then I can narrate. Does the universe have a language? Does it, how does it express itself? So then they connived that the universe probably has this rhythm, cycles. It talks in different sense we don't understand. So that's the all Vedas is about. That is, how do I connect to sun? How do I connect to air? How do I connect to fire? What language they have? How do I connect to thunder? So that led to this question of prosody. So that made this thing, that is, we have to develop techniques of connecting to these different layers of. So the question is, since we do not know what those languages are, so we just like we tame, domesticate cats, dogs, and so on, we try different ways and so on till they listen, not thinking that they're listening. So basically, you go on creating different ways of operation, assuming that something will happen. So science of prosody developed to capture emotional thrust of composition through voice rendering. So remember this voice I told you before the speech. So that becomes the important part, that I can really, by virtue of exercising my tone, voice, my intonation, I can reach to wherever universe is. Sun is, air is, or God is, or whosoever giver is. The pattern occurs. And then this is important. This is science. That is, they thought that rhythm is binary. Rhythm, all rhythm, is a function of 1 or 2. So 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2. So whatever it is, you can make thousands or millions of this kind of series. So that became music. We don't know exactly how that 1, 2 came to be, but they call it like either exist, non-exist. Exist, but exist, non-exist is 0. But 2 is exist and twice exist. Exist and twice exist. So that's a particular sound and double the sound. That particular book I have not found yet. So prosody chanda was defined as pranamatra. Pranamatra is life force, in time measured life force. Matra is that particular duration. Then chanda is expressed the voice and so on. And bachika prana. Bachika prana, life is expressed the voice. This is another significant part biologically, which I will not go in detail now. Then musicology came out of it. Musicology, and this is again whether when you do this kind of prosody, then how do you really relate it to your body operation? So they discovered that we have a Kalki perception of 22. There's a pitch hierarchy. They call it some kind of name called Shruti. Shruti means what you can hear. So that's the pitch. So that is where you all apparently have. But they may not be all developed. You may not hear them all. So the question is, so they kind of said, well, there are 3 levels and so on. There's the chest level, there's the throat level, there's the head level, and there's a whole detailed technology about it. And then what happens is, out of this 22, you develop some kind of a voice that you think you can fit in with. So that's why people kind of, tune instruments and so on, what they can sing. So then finally that thing becomes melody. Now my point is, each of this transition is voluminous amount of work. So when I'm doing it in a line this thing, I'm doing extremely sloppy work for this majestic contribution to the world. Then the Suti, then they say that it has a laya, the rate. You know what I mean? Shruti in the sense, the movement of your perception or the musical appreciation is Shruti. But then that this laya becomes the rate I told before, this 1-2 operation. The laya can be sustained as Dhruta, Madhya, and Vilambita. Right? 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2. So like that. So then laya made it Kala. So that's the whole thing of time measurement came in. Science of dramatics, people talked about it, I won't go into more. But the point is, it's kind of, we kind of believe when you read the books that it's written as prescription. But nothing, means you can't really say, hey, look, if you're angry, make it like this face. People have to accept that face. So that empirical observation, the eyes and tones and the chest and the chin and the muscles and the legs and the toes and so on, what happened? Oh, okay. So you kind of do, and then, so that kind of, we do not know how old it is and how much observations were there. We have not found them. But the point is that the whole book of dramatics did develop, the science of mind. So I am running out of my own time, but I must tell you that this is going to be called Chitta. So that was discovered. Chitta in the sense that there is an object reality, which means that before you really understand it, you have an understanding of my presence here, objectively. That chitta. And the question is, all our chittas may not be clean. So that is where they say that if your chitta is clean, your mind is clean. But that's a whole lecture by itself. So Yoga declared chitta can be retained pure to practicing restraints and so on. And then mind can be made shunya. Shunya is blank. And then you can get, so that's a new word called kaivalya, which yoga invented. Medical science, so happy mind declared to increase is a healthy mind, good health, vegetarianism, empirical is the herbs, plant products, then you have heard that before, then clean water, daily bath, teeth, tongue cleaning, then supplements, and then health habits for pregnant women. So this is important. When I read that, so the question is, we don't have in this country at the present time how people should conduct themselves. In my own family, we have autism now. And autism is a function of the pregnant woman was not taken care of. Either she abused or people did not really take care of her. Something went wrong. So that process he prescribes that you need good, healthy people from pregnant women. And then astronomy was very developed, except my complaint to them is, so they kind of developed into astrology because they thought that if something will happen in space, something will happen in the ground, which is not correct. They thought that the shadows of the earth will kind of make eclipse and so on. But the point is, the important thing I want to convey is that numerals, they had large numbers they talked about, except they didn't develop the way to write those numbers. So they used alphabets to write the numbers, not the so-called Arabic numerals, which came later. So they had a concept of numbers, concept of large numbers, but not the numerals. Technology, I'll quickly go through. Steel making, stone carving, epigraphy, art, forest, dyes, civil engineering, terracotta, farming. So let's go through just quickly some pictures here. So this is the steel making, which was kind of useful. The crucible steel, and then they're still making them. Those daggers, which are kind of a, so idea will be the steel can be plastic. Plastic in the sense when you really stab someone, the steel doesn't really break. And somehow, I don't know why Indian discovered it, by chance or something, but it is a peculiar way of Indian technology. So then the stone was also used, the iron was used to rust-proof iron. This is an iron pillar, which people who go to Delhi, you will see this. I went last year. And then at the brass bells, there are the coins, and this bangles, this anklets. And then the color, and then people are making this kind of utensils. This you have covered, so I won't go into this, except there's a special, a carved temple. Somebody mentioned about whether the caves are carved, a temple is carved. There's the rocks around this, and it's kind of going upside down. And then here are the scripts. So this is a script from the early Asoka script. This is in my home state, it's a copper script. And this is where it eventually wrote
Just
the stylus and
1
so on.
minute.
Yeah, okay. And then here are the herbs. The herbs, the important thing is they discovered that the herbs cannot be domesticated. A medicine has to be produced in its own environment, which means they have to go to the mountains to get the herb. You can't really homegrown them. So I go to these places, take home and this thing. So that is a spice. Spice is not a herb. Herb is something which will cure, help you therapeutically. And then they had all this kind of sandalwood, then black pepper, and then this cinnamon, honey, and berries. So there's a huge amount of this thing, what these things do, and how they will help people. And then they have, I have talked about the dyes. So dyes will come in this textile and the silk and so on. Krishna will talked about the dyes in the Ajanta, and this also bright dyes here. You have the dyes of the silk. Then construction. So there's well construction, well here, road, this Patliputra, and this is like the Jarasandha, this Nalanda. And this is ivory came into use. And this is where the metal must have been very useful. And this is the clay things that you saw before. So this is from Pakistan, modern day Pakistan, which is the earlier Indus Valley operation. And then we have these tools, agriculture, but this is also important in the sense the terrace agriculture in the mountains and irrigation. And this is the, I don't see, many people have said that India did not develop industrial revolution. They did not create tools. They did not create AI. They did not create how to make it mechanized. I don't know why. We'll probably answer them as we go on. Silk was produced. So this kind of, I'm showing you to silk this thing. And I don't think the silk industry has changed much over the time. Then they have the marine trade. So this is like a sculpture from that time. And this is a boat which is implied now. And these two are figures from my place, the place I come from. And that's a port where supposed to be this was operating from, where, as I said in the beginning, people are traveling to different places. All right. So that's mine. Thank you. Thank you.
Cultural productions and in community service. Enthusiastic in nature, empathetic in nature. She offers, she's enthusiastic too. She offers, sorry, it would help if I had my glasses on. She offers hand to people, she offers a hand to people in need wherever she can. She serves as the treasurer of the India Discovery Center.
Hi. Let's look at the economy and politics in this golden period. Like the name says, as the name says, the golden period. I mean, the name itself says that it's very prosperous. The economy in that era was so prosperous that it led to the stability in general. There was excess in surplus in the produce, which led to trading. The trading was done both inland and in the foreign land. The society had time to relax and, they encouraged the creativity in people. Like, although dancing, music, everything was there, but in this era, people touched, they added their own style. Like, it's not just following the dance rules or something, everybody, like, they articulated in their own style. Like we have seen in the Ajanta frescoes and stuff, where like the women were dressed ornamented, and everybody had their unique style. Now coming to the political administration, the administrative system was decentralized. Although the king was the monarch, but he decentralized it into subunits. That way the performance was good. And the king's main role was to serve his people, levy taxes in moderation, and he took care of the military and the infrastructure. The political peace was maintained due to this economic stability and prosperity. Now let's look at the administrative roles. I just will read out some of the main roles. The king's title was called the Raja, and the great king was Maharaja. The army chief was the Senadipati, the minister is the Mantri, the clerk was the Nagarika, the worker was the Karmika, the prince was the Yuvaraja, and the commander-in-chief was the Nayaka. Now the qualities of the king. I've read a little bit of the Kautilya Shastrashastra, and I really like these qualities, and so I thought I'd make a slide of it. In it says the king, the happiness of the king lies in his own, his happiness lies in his own people's happiness. So the highest qualities of the king were leadership, intelligence, and practiced Rajadharma. Now, the leadership, according to the Kautilya, he defines that the king should be able to lead the army in war, and he has to have discipline, religiousness, gratitude, and he should promote welfare to his people at all times. The intellectual qualities include, should have a keen and sharp mind, and he should have the ability to grasp quickly and to have a strong memory. He should be able to accept guidance from his counselors and have a foresight and wait for the right opportunities. Some of the principles of Rajadharma the king ought to follow. The welfare of his people should always come first, and he should always impose only moderate taxes on the people, and the justice should be rewarding and punishing. He should check the public opinion, and he should conduct himself with high dignity and have self-control. Now let's go to the next higher level, which is the minister. The minister, there's a saying in Sanskrit, it says Karneshu Mantri. That means he should have the ability to advise the king in all times, should be loyal to his king, logical, amicable, and should be well trained in all the arts. I'll quote some of the political quotes of Kautilya here. So one should not act against his king. A clever politician should not cause a rift between the two kingdoms. A weak ruler should seek refuge in the strong. And in case of if you have many enemies, you enter treaty with only one. So funny. And Kautilya Shastrashastra also details the instructions of how to control the state, how to organize the economy, and how to conduct the war. Let's go a little bit in detail about the political freedom that was well established. Since the duties of the rulers is followed, and also the science of politics, which is the Niti Shastra, is followed. So this led to the peace in the country, and the judicial system was handled very well in the court, and people were punished impartially, and the evidence were collected for the criminal and the civil cases, just like today. The person's conduct was way highest in the society in those days. Let's look at few kingdoms in this era. The first one I start with is the Satavahana Empire. It's currently now Andhra, Telangana, and the Maharashtra areas, the Deccan Continental. until this kingdom was established in the south, there was no political unity there. So the Satavahanas were very powerful and they have established the political stability in the Deccan continent. These were the first rulers who coined the king's name and his picture on the coins, and which was circulating. They were the first ones to bring that in a larger scale and use it on a day-to-day basis. They also appointed many dignitaries of different grades, the highest being the king and the Maharadi and Mahabhoja. Also, the empire had many urban centers. Although the king had absolute power, the power was decentralized and was divided into various convenient administrative units. So these units were not rigid. And the kingdom was called Janapada, and it was divided into districts called Agraharas and the villages called Gramas. And there were, other representatives who would, take care of other stuff like the storekeepers, treasurers, the guptas, and who would help with the king. Coming to the Kalinga period. So this period, the present day, is the Puri, Cuttack, and the district of Odisha. The greatest of the Kharavela king, one of the greatest kings of Kharavela, he was a Jain, but just like Ashoka, he was very tolerant towards the other religions. He constructed the Udaigiri hill, which is used by the Jains, the Rishis, and the Buddhist Samyagas. And the inscriptions in the Hadith book tells that it writes so much about this thing that that leads to believe that he's the greatest of all. Like he was helping out, all religions. And he would repair all the shrines, and he also got some the changes in the society. Coming to the Magadha Empire. So currently it's the Patna, the Nalanda, Aurangabad, the Gaya, and some parts of Bengal. This had a great geographical position. The north side it had the Ganges, and the south is the Vindhya Hills, and towards the east is Champa River. It had two capitals. The Rajagriha was the initial capital, and later on the Pataliputra came. There were many iron deposits near the Rajagriha, and the Pataliputra served as the port. The Magadhas were believed to use elephants in a large scale in war. The ambitious rulers like the Bimbasara, Ajatasattu, and Mahapada established as a powerful kingdom. Now, coming to the south, the Chola and the Pandyan Empire. So this is around the Cholas ruled around the Kaveri River. Kanchi, currently the Kanchipuram, comes under Chola kingdom, and the Pandyans had the Madurai as the port. There were a lot of trades that took place between Romans and the Pandyans. Korkalai was the trading center in those days. And the Chola king called Karikala, he built the great irrigation channels, the embankments around the river. The Pandyans were considered very wealthy, and they had many councils. Like at one point, it was believed they had like 60 councillors. Also, they levied taxes, and the judicial system was functioning well. And the Pandyan kings, they were poets too, and hence the literacy embassies called Sangam was established during that period. Let's see the administration part. So the administration, the governor is called Nagaraka. He is responsible to preserve the law and order, collect taxes, maintain the street cleanliness. serve the army and have some secret agents. Also, not only that, they should have a mechanism like in case of famine, flood, or plague, they should have a plan to help out the villages. And also the head of the village is called the Grama Poshaka. He had the powers to fine for minor offences and expel somebody out of the village for the serious offences. So his responsibility was to save basically the village from bandits and the cattle raids and settling disputes. The taxing system, it's pretty much like the modern day, except the taxes were divided based on, like say, if you have a land, a portion of produce was only taxed. In modern day, based on the income, like you pay taxes similar to that. So there were taxes on livestock, dairy products, and parts, textiles. Also the trade, it will come to the next slide. If we look at trading, what the products were exported and imported. But merchants who use the road were taxed, the current day toll system was there, looks like. So the tax officer, Nantapala, was in charge of collecting taxes. Also, there were exemptions and revisions for the taxes. Say, if the village supplies the soldiers, then it's exempt from the taxing. Or the king has the right to raise taxes or remove the taxes in case of flood or famine. In this era, agriculture was the main occupation. The cooperative irrigation was practiced. Cattle were used for plowing, and the crops, some of the crops that cultivated were rice, pulses, saffron, pepper, gourds, pumpkin, sugarcane. Also, the land was divided into, although the land did not belong to an individual person, it was divided and cultivated, like say a certain set of people who were the farmers got the cultivated land. So based on the need basis, it was given like the grazing lands, some of the lands was reserved for the firewood. The loans were given on the security, like basically the gold items were used for security. The money was stored, so the saving system existed then. So let's see, this is the last slide of the economy. So the state, pretty much regulated the economy, controlled the trade prices, weights, and measurements, and it also owned the salt. In those days, the salt was a huge revenue. So it owned the state salt plants, the mines, the pearl fisheries. And near the coastal line, there were new cities that developed, like near the Godavari Delta, near the Cochin Road. And some of the ports I mentioned, these were the ports that are widely used for inland and sea. The trade was inland and the marine also, so those are some of the trading centers. And the road network was widely expanded, so like the Grand Trunk Road, I'll show you the map of those. So that's the Grand Trunk Road, that's huge. It still exists. And let's look at some of the trade exports and imports items. So other than the produce, also the crafts and arts were also traded. The barter system were used. The coins for business transactions was introduced and were widely used. Some of the export items, the agricultural products, the forest products, the metals, the marine products, the textiles like muslin, bangles. The imported items were like mostly the horses, were imported from Arabia, Afghanistan. From China, like the porcelain and the silk was imported in Roman jars. So that shows the trade road between different countries. And I conclude by saying that since the economy was prosperous, that led to a creative society. The Ramayana and Mahabharata were already compiled. The Mahavyasa by Patanjali was composed, which laid the grammatical principles. Also, the Buddhist and Jain literature blossomed during this period. The Yoga Sutras were written. Since the merchants, by doing the trading, were very prosperous in the towns, they had money to spare, so they donated, and that was used to build all those Buddhist monasteries and the stupas. So I conclude saying that the excess wealth also might have contributed to the creativity. Thank you.